Serafina, Sarah, Marlowe brushed a stray lock of dark hair away from her forehead, releasing a tired sigh as she picked up yet another tray laden with shimmering glasses of champagne. The lights in the exclusive Miami nightclub, Luminescence, pulsed rhythmically around her, casting shadows and streaks of neon color across the wealthy and powerful clientele scattered throughout the extravagant room. Her feet ached in her high heels, and her fitted black uniform was suffocating, but she had learned long ago how to hide her discomfort behind a practiced, professional smile. She navigated expertly between velvet-lined booths, discreetly serving drinks to powerful businessmen and socialites who scarcely acknowledged her existence. To them, she was invisible, just another faceless servant in their glamorous playground. Yet despite her exhaustion, Sarah preferred it that way. Being invisible meant safety, anonymity, and protection from the kinds of complications she had always worked hard to avoid. But tonight, fate had a different plan. A hushed murmur rippled through the club as the doors swung open, revealing a man whose presence immediately drew every eye in the room. Even in a place filled with celebrities and moguls, Lennox Caldwell stood apart. He radiated confidence, a magnetic force that commanded attention. Sarah paused, momentarily captivated, unable to tear her eyes from him. His tall frame was perfectly tailored in an impeccably cut black suit, his eyes intense beneath brows slightly furrowed as if perpetually lost in thought. "Careful, Sarah," murmured her coworker, Rowan, playfully nudging her shoulder. "That's Lennox Caldwell. Men like him don't notice girls like us." Sarah quickly shook herself free of the strange spell Lennox had cast over her, offering Rowan a nervous smile before returning to her duties. Rowan was right, men like Lennox Caldwell lived in a world far beyond her reach. He was a billionaire who regularly made headlines for his ruthless business dealings and extravagant lifestyle. A girl working multiple shifts just to make rent didn't belong in his universe. It was safer to admire him from afar and then swiftly dismiss him. But fate had other ideas. As the night progressed, Sarah was called to the VIP section, an exclusive area reserved only for Luminescence's most esteemed patrons. Her heart pounded nervously as she carefully balanced her tray and approached the private booth. When she arrived, she felt her breath catch sharply in her chest. Sitting there, alone, casually swirling a glass of bourbon, was Lennox Caldwell himself. His piercing eyes settled directly upon her as she set down his drink. He studied her silently, with an intensity that felt almost tangible, sending a thrilling but unsettling heat rushing through her veins. For the first time in years, Sarah felt utterly exposed. She had spent so long making herself invisible that being truly seen by someone felt strangely foreign. "Thank you," Lennox said finally, his voice deep, smooth, and tinged with a quiet authority that made her pulse race. "You're welcome, sir," Sarah replied softly, preparing to retreat. But before she could turn away, his voice stopped her again. "Stay." Sarah hesitated, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Sir." A faint smile tugged at the corner of Lennox's lips, softening his features ever so slightly. "Sit with me. Just for a moment." It wasn't a request, it was an invitation she somehow couldn't refuse. Despite every rational instinct screaming at her to decline, something compelled her forward, and she slowly slid into the plush velvet seat beside him, careful to maintain a respectable distance. Lennox regarded her quietly for a long moment, his gaze lingering thoughtfully on her face. "Do you always look so wary around men, or is it just me?" he asked finally, amusement and curiosity dancing in his eyes. Sarah swallowed, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry. It's not personal. I'm just used to being invisible here." "You're hardly invisible," Lennox replied softly, his voice serious, almost tender. "I noticed you the moment I walked in." Sarah's heart skipped a beat, her pulse fluttering nervously in her throat. "Why?" she whispered, genuinely confused. "There are women here tonight who are beautiful, famous, powerful. Why would someone like you notice someone like me?" Lennox leaned closer, his voice lowering intimately. Because I recognize sincerity when I see it. Authenticity is rare in my world. You're not pretending, not playing a role. I find that captivating. A shiver of excitement ran down Sarah's spine, mingled with a cautious warning from deep within her. She'd heard rumors of Lennox Caldwell's reputation, charming but dangerous, seductive but ruthless. He was known for his calculated maneuvers, both in business and personal affairs. Trusting a man like him could be perilous. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell," she finally said, pulling away emotionally even as curiosity kept her physically rooted to the spot. "But I should probably go." "Lennox," he corrected gently, his eyes still locked firmly onto hers. "Call me Lennox. And tell me your name." "Serafina," she replied softly. "Sarah, actually." "Serafina," he echoed quietly, testing her name as if tasting something sweet. "It suits you, beautiful and intriguing." His words filled her with warmth, yet Sarah stood abruptly, sensing she was on the edge of something dangerous. "I really should go." Lennox rose swiftly, reaching out gently but firmly to catch her wrist, his touch sending electricity through her veins. "Wait. I understand your hesitation, but I don't want this conversation to end here. Come with me, Serafina. Just tonight. Just us. No obligations, no expectations." The offer stunned her. Part of her wanted desperately to say yes, to seize this one reckless, exhilarating opportunity. But caution still tugged at her, whispering warnings from her past. "Why me?" she asked again, breathless. "You could have anyone." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Exactly. And yet, tonight, I choose you." Those words erased her lingering doubts. Against all rational judgment, she nodded, allowing Lennox Caldwell, the billionaire stranger whose world couldn't have been more different from hers, to lead her from the safety of her anonymity into a night that promised to change everything she knew about herself and the man standing beside her. As Lennox guided her out into the cool Miami night, Sarah had no idea this single decision, made in a moment of impulsive courage, would bind her fate irrevocably to his, setting into motion a journey of passion, secrets, heartbreak, and ultimately a love that neither had ever dared dream possible. Serafina awoke alone the next morning, her body wrapped in the soft embrace of silken sheets she knew didn't belong to her humble apartment. For a moment, panic tightened her chest as her surroundings slowly came into focus. The spacious suite around her was luxurious beyond imagination, sunlight spilling softly through tall glass windows overlooking the turquoise waters of Miami's coastline. She clutched the sheets to her chest, memories of the previous night rushing back vividly. Her pulse quickened as flashes of Lennox Caldwell's intense eyes, his passionate kisses, and the whispered promises of their intimate encounter filled her thoughts. Yet, the bed beside her was empty, no sign of Lennox anywhere. She hesitantly glanced around the room, her heart dropping when she noticed no note, no message, nothing to indicate he planned to see her again. The romantic warmth she'd briefly allowed herself to feel vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, familiar sting of embarrassment. Had she truly expected him, a billionaire known for fleeting encounters, to wake beside her and whisper sweet nothings? Serafina forced herself from the bed, quickly gathering her scattered clothing from the floor. Each piece was a painful reminder of the impulsive choice she'd made, one night, she'd told herself, with no strings attached. But she'd never truly been that kind of woman, and the emptiness she now felt proved it. She dressed hurriedly, praying she'd avoid any encounter on her way out. Luckily, the lavish penthouse appeared deserted. Taking one last glance at the spectacular, sunlit view she'd never see again, Sarah slipped quietly out the door, feeling both relieved and deeply humiliated. Days passed, turning into weeks, and Sarah gradually returned to her routine. She continued working tirelessly at Luminescence, determined to push memories of Lennox Caldwell from her mind. Yet no matter how she tried, he lingered stubbornly in her thoughts, haunting her dreams and leaving her restless. Then, weeks later, everything shifted. Sarah woke feeling unusually sick, nauseous and dizzy, emotions unstable in ways she'd never experienced. Initially, she dismissed the symptoms, convinced exhaustion was finally catching up to her. But when they persisted, panic slowly crept in. After days of denial, she finally forced herself to take a pregnancy test, her hands trembling as she awaited the results. 2 pink lines appeared boldly, confirming her worst fears and greatest hope all at once. She stared blankly at the test, her heart thundering wildly in her chest. Pregnant. A child, a life, created from one passionate night with a man she barely knew. She sank to the bathroom floor, overwhelmed by emotions ranging from fear to shock to a small but undeniable sense of awe. The next day, Sarah visited her doctor, desperate for answers. But as she lay nervously on the examination table, an ultrasound revealed even more stunning news: not just 1 heartbeat, but 4. Quadruplets. The doctor's voice sounded distant as he explained the rarity and risks of such pregnancies. Sarah barely registered his words, consumed instead by the magnitude of what this meant for her life. 4 babies. Alone. How could she possibly manage? She knew instantly she couldn't tell Lennox Caldwell. He was a billionaire, used to power, freedom, and control. Would a man like him even accept this situation? What if he accused her of trapping him? Terrified of rejection or worse, resentment, she resolved firmly to raise her children alone, protecting herself, and them, from further heartbreak. As her pregnancy progressed, reality crashed over her, harsh and unforgiving. Medical bills began stacking up, and Luminescence had no patience for a pregnant waitress. She was fired without hesitation, leaving her scrambling to make ends meet. Determined and resilient, she quickly took odd jobs, cleaning houses, working at cafes, anything to keep herself financially afloat. Meanwhile, Lennox Caldwell had returned to his high-powered life, yet something within him had shifted irreversibly. His night with Serafina replayed relentlessly in his thoughts. He became distracted at meetings, his sharp business instincts dulled by memories of her warmth, her sincerity, the gentle innocence she'd revealed in those precious few hours. For the first time, the billionaire known for his cold precision felt hollow, incomplete. Consumed by curiosity, he discreetly attempted to track Sarah down, hiring private investigators. But to his frustration, her trail had vanished. She'd quit the club, left no forwarding address, and seemingly disappeared from the city he commanded effortlessly. The mystery gnawed at him, fueling a relentless determination to find her, to understand why she had fled without even leaving him a chance to explain himself. Months passed, bringing greater hardship and worry to Sarah's doorstep. Her pregnancy had become visibly noticeable, drawing judgmental whispers from neighbors who knew her as a quiet, single woman. Anxiety plagued her constantly, especially when doctors warned of potential complications from carrying quadruplets. She felt entirely isolated, secretly yearning for the strong presence Lennox had once offered. One afternoon, when Sarah arrived home exhausted from yet another cleaning shift, she found an envelope slipped beneath her door. Her hands trembled as she opened it, eyes widening when she saw the check inside. An enormous amount of money, enough to cover every expense and ensure the children's futures, written by an unfamiliar law firm, marked simply as a donation from an anonymous benefactor. Stunned and wary, Sarah desperately searched for clues, but found nothing indicating the donor's identity. She knew only one person capable of such generosity, but Lennox had vanished from her life. Could he have found her? If so, why hadn't he reached out? Or was this just another cruel trick played by fate? Despite the relief the money provided, questions consumed her thoughts. She feared the price of accepting such generosity. Yet for the sake of her unborn children, she reluctantly accepted the gift, silently vowing to repay every penny one day. Unbeknownst to her, Lennox had finally succeeded in locating her. From afar, he'd learned of her pregnancy and understood immediately what it meant. Shocked, he had struggled internally, grappling with confusion, guilt, and a profound desire to protect the woman who'd touched his life so unexpectedly. He couldn't yet face her, afraid of rejection, of confrontation, but resolved never to abandon her again. Determined, Lennox silently provided financial stability, medical care, and security for Sarah, all without her knowledge. Yet he remained hidden, his identity concealed behind layers of lawyers and intermediaries, watching over her from a distance while building the courage to reveal himself. Back in her modest apartment, Sarah gently rubbed her growing belly, whispering softly to her babies. Despite the uncertainty, fear, and hardship, she found strength in the promise of motherhood. She vowed fiercely to love them enough for two parents, unaware that the man she'd once given herself to was silently promising the same from afar. Neither knew the storms ahead, nor the emotional confrontations that would soon change their lives yet again. But in that quiet moment, separated by secrets yet bound together by fate, Serafina and Lennox both realized a powerful truth: what had begun as an impulsive night had grown into something far greater, far more meaningful, than either had ever imagined. Months had passed, and Serafina found herself adjusting to the physical and emotional demands of carrying quadruplets. Every morning brought new challenges: swollen ankles, constant nausea, aching fatigue, but each discomfort was overshadowed by the profound love she felt for the lives growing inside her. Yet, beneath her love lay constant anxiety. Even with the anonymous donation that relieved her financial strain, Sarah felt isolated, plagued by the secrecy surrounding the identity of the father of her children. Still determined to protect herself and her babies from judgment or rejection, Sarah concealed her pregnancy as best as she could. But with 4 babies growing inside her petite frame, that task soon became impossible. Whispering neighbors and judgmental stares haunted her daily. She overheard speculation and gossip at the grocery store and caught sideways glances of pity and judgment from former friends who distanced themselves the moment her pregnancy became evident. She felt painfully alone, yet she stood firm, determined never to regret the choices she'd made. Meanwhile, Lennox Caldwell's life had become consumed by thoughts of Serafina and the children they'd conceived together. The normally ruthless tycoon, known for his uncompromising nature, found himself restless, sleepless, and consumed with worry over a woman who didn't even know his true identity. He had long ago discovered her pregnancy through discreet inquiries, using every resource available to secretly ensure her well-being. But it wasn't enough. Watching from a distance had become unbearable. He was desperate to enter her life again, to support her openly, to finally confess everything. One rainy afternoon, Lennox arrived unannounced at Sarah's modest apartment, heart racing in nervous anticipation. After a brief hesitation, he knocked firmly on her door. Moments later, the door slowly opened, revealing Sarah, wide-eyed, her expression a mixture of shock, confusion, and suspicion. "Lennox," she whispered, her voice unsteady with disbelief and panic. "How did you find me?" He stepped inside cautiously, feeling suddenly vulnerable. "I never stopped looking," he confessed gently. "I couldn't stop thinking about you, about that night." She studied him warily, instinctively protecting her visibly pregnant belly. "Why now? It's been months. You vanished without a trace, Lennox. And suddenly, here you are at my doorstep." He exhaled slowly, gathering his courage. "I know about the babies," he admitted softly, eyes full of genuine vulnerability. "I didn't know until recently, but I couldn't stay away once I found out. Please let me help you, Sarah. Let me be there for you and our children." Shock, fear, and confusion surged through Sarah as she stared at him. She felt anger, betrayal, yet an undeniable longing for the warmth and support he offered. "How do you even know they're yours?" she challenged, hiding her deep fear beneath anger. "Because I feel it here," he replied passionately, placing a hand firmly over his heart. "I know it sounds irrational, Sarah, but from the moment I saw you again, I knew. Tell me I'm wrong, and I'll leave you alone forever. But look me in the eye and tell me honestly, you don't feel the same?" Sarah looked away, tears threatening her resolve. "You don't know me," she whispered softly. You don't know anything about me. I know enough, he insisted, stepping closer. I know you're brave. You're resilient. You're fiercely protective of your children. Let me help you, Serafina. I don't care if you push me away. I will fight for you, for all of you, as long as it takes to win your trust. She swallowed hard, feeling her resistance crumble under his intense sincerity. Slowly, she stepped aside, silently allowing Lennox into her humble home, into the chaos of her life. Days passed into weeks, and Lennox gradually became an integral part of Sarah's world. He accompanied her to doctor's appointments, his presence steady and reassuring, even when complications arose in her high-risk pregnancy. Lennox quietly transformed Sarah's tiny apartment, turning it into a safe haven with comfortable furniture, cribs, and supplies for the impending quadruplets. He asked nothing in return, never pressuring her emotionally, simply offering quiet, steadfast support. Sarah, despite her fears, found herself deeply grateful, slowly lowering her guard. Yet, their growing closeness drew unwanted attention. Tabloids caught wind of Lennox's frequent visits, rumors swirling about the billionaire's mysterious pregnant lover. Gossip spread rapidly, and soon Sarah found herself the target of vicious headlines, painting her as a manipulative gold digger who had trapped Lennox Caldwell, one of Miami's wealthiest tycoons. Humiliated and terrified, she withdrew emotionally, devastated by the cruelty of strangers who knew nothing about her. One night, overwhelmed by the relentless media attention, Sarah packed her bags, determined to flee. She would protect her children from further scrutiny, even if it meant leaving Lennox behind. But just as she prepared to leave, Lennox burst through her apartment door, visibly distraught, having seen the latest headlines. He fell to his knees before her, eyes pleading desperately. "Don't leave me again, Sarah," he begged fiercely. "Don't let them tear us apart. What we have, it's real. Let me fight for us, for you." She stared into his pleading eyes, tears falling down her cheeks. "I'm scared, Lennox. I'm afraid they'll destroy you too. Your life, your reputation, it's all at stake." "I don't care," he vowed passionately. "I'd sacrifice everything, my fortune, my reputation, for you and our children. Trust me, please." She felt her defenses finally shatter. She saw clearly the sincerity in his gaze, the depth of his love, the fierceness with which he wanted to protect her. She slowly nodded, stepping toward him, allowing herself to surrender completely to his embrace. That night marked a turning point. Lennox openly announced their relationship to the media, passionately defending Sarah and proudly acknowledging their unborn quadruplets as his own. His shocking declaration stunned the public and silenced critics, turning the scandalous narrative into a modern fairy tale of unexpected romance and redemption. In the safety of Lennox's protective arms, Serafina finally allowed herself to believe in happiness, believing that perhaps fate had brought them together for reasons she had never imagined. But even as they found peace and security, neither knew that Lennox's world concealed far darker secrets, and their love would soon face its greatest test. In the aftermath of Lennox's shocking public declaration, Serafina's quiet life vanished completely. The luxury penthouse where Lennox insisted she move was breathtakingly beautiful, perched high above the bustling city skyline with panoramic views of Miami's glittering oceanfront. But despite the comforts surrounding her, the sleek furniture, the attentive staff, the endless flow of carefully prepared meals and private doctors on standby, Sarah felt strangely disconnected from her surroundings. The luxury was intimidating, foreign to a woman accustomed to struggling. Yet, deep within her heart, a fragile seed of trust had begun to grow, nurtured by Lennox's unwavering presence and sincerity. Lennox's public acknowledgement had silenced many critics, yet gossip still simmered beneath the surface. Tabloids speculated wildly about the woman who had captured the notoriously cold-hearted tycoon's heart, and Serafina found herself scrutinized by strangers eager to uncover her secrets. But Lennox, determined and fiercely protective, shielded her from most of the harshest rumors, constantly assuring her that she didn't need to face the storm alone. As her pregnancy progressed, complications arose unexpectedly, throwing their world into turmoil. One afternoon, a sharp pain seized her, causing her to double over while unpacking tiny clothes in the nursery Lennox had carefully designed. Panic flooded her veins as she clutched the side of a crib, feeling helpless as tears blurred her vision. In mere minutes, Lennox burst into the room, alerted by the staff's urgent call. He rushed her to the hospital, his face pale with anxiety and concern. Doctors quickly stabilized her, assuring them that she and the quadruplets were safe for now but cautioning Serafina to avoid stress. Lennox's eyes were filled with terror, a stark contrast to his usual composed exterior. Later that night, as she lay exhausted and afraid in a hospital bed, Lennox sat beside her, silently clutching her hand as if his grip alone could keep her safe. "Please don't scare me like that again, Sarah," he whispered, voice raw with emotion. "I've never felt so helpless. I couldn't bear losing you or our babies." Serafina squeezed his hand weakly, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered softly. "I didn't mean to frighten you. I guess I've been so used to doing everything alone that I forget to ask for help." Lennox leaned forward, eyes intense with sincerity. "You don't ever need to do anything alone again, Sarah. I promise you, I'm here. Always." Days turned into weeks, and Lennox kept his promise, personally overseeing Serafina's recovery and care. He moved his corporate headquarters temporarily into his penthouse, ensuring he would never be far from her side. She found herself unexpectedly comforted by his quiet strength, the intimacy between them growing deeper, stronger each day. His protective tenderness became her lifeline, and in return, she gave Lennox something he'd never known, unconditional trust. Yet just as Serafina began allowing herself to dream of a happy, stable future, another storm erupted unexpectedly. Lennox's younger brother, Easton Caldwell, a man with his own hidden grievances, arrived unannounced at the penthouse. Their relationship had always been complicated, strained by years of rivalry and jealousy. Easton resented Lennox's authority, believing he'd always been overshadowed by his older brother's relentless success. When Easton discovered Serafina's existence, his jealousy erupted viciously. He confronted her privately one afternoon when Lennox was away, cornering her in the penthouse library. Easton's voice dripped with cold disdain as he mocked her softly, "You really believe Lennox cares about you? You're a means to an end, Sarah. He only publicly claimed you to protect his precious reputation. Soon enough, he'll tire of playing house and toss you aside." Serafina's chest tightened painfully, old insecurities flaring once more. "That's not true," she whispered weakly, but doubt crept into her heart regardless. Easton smirked coldly. "Ask yourself, Sarah, why did Lennox wait so long to find you? If he really cared, wouldn't he have come sooner?" His words struck a nerve, planting fresh seeds of doubt. When Lennox returned later that evening, he instantly sensed the shift in her demeanor. Serafina avoided his gaze, retreating emotionally to protect herself from the pain of potential betrayal. "What's wrong, Sarah?" Lennox asked softly, his voice edged with worry. She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Easton came today. He said things. He said I was just temporary, a tool you use to protect your reputation." Anger flashed across Lennox's face, and he swiftly approached her, gently gripping her shoulders to meet her gaze. "Serafina, Easton has always resented me. Don't let his bitterness poison what we have. I searched desperately for you. The moment I found out about the babies, I moved heaven and earth to protect you. Please, you have to trust me." Tears shimmered in her eyes as she saw genuine pain in his expression. "But Lennox, you waited. Why did you wait?" He exhaled heavily, finally bearing his vulnerable truth. "Because I was afraid, Sarah. Afraid you'd reject me. Afraid I wouldn't be good enough for you and our children. But the thought of losing you terrifies me more than anything. Everything else, my wealth, my reputation, it all means nothing without you." Serafina felt her heart thaw at his raw confession. She reached out, her fingers softly tracing his cheek. "Promise me you won't hide anything else from me, Lennox. If we're going to survive, there can't be secrets between us." Lennox nodded solemnly, pulling her into a protective embrace. "No more secrets, Sarah. From now on, nothing comes between us." Weeks passed, and as they overcame the confrontation with Easton, Serafina's trust in Lennox deepened significantly. He was there for every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, every moment of panic or anxiety. Together, they carefully prepared their home and their hearts for the impending arrival of their quadruplets. Yet, in the calm that followed, a quiet shadow still lurked beneath the surface. Easton wasn't finished. Fueled by jealousy and resentment, he reached out to Lennox's most dangerous business rival, Callum Maddox, a ruthless competitor determined to destroy Lennox and everything he held dear. Easton revealed details of Serafina's past, fabricating lies to paint her as someone who deliberately set out to trap Lennox for financial gain. As the story exploded publicly, Lennox fiercely protected Serafina, standing firmly beside her despite the damaging accusations. Privately, however, his heart raged. He vowed to confront Easton, determined to finally end the bitterness tearing his family apart. And in the midst of the turmoil, Serafina stood strong, fiercely determined to protect Lennox's reputation, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. She now fully understood the complexities and dangers of loving a powerful man. Yet, despite the storm, she realized she had fallen irrevocably, passionately, and undeniably in love with Lennox Caldwell, the billionaire who had once been nothing more than a mysterious stranger, but who now represented her entire world. In that moment, with scandals swirling around them, both Lennox and Serafina knew one thing for certain: they would face whatever came next together, refusing to allow anyone to tear apart the fragile yet fiercely powerful bond they had forged from one unforgettable night that in the weeks following the scandal instigated by Easton and Callum Maddox, Lennox's penthouse became both a fortress and a prison for Serafina. On one hand, it provided a secure sanctuary, protected by walls of wealth, power, and security guards posted discreetly outside every entrance. Yet, on the other, it isolated her from the outside world, deepening the emotional strain she felt as tabloids and gossip columns continued to pick apart every intimate detail of her life, twisting truth into scandalous lies. Despite Lennox's constant reassurance and unwavering devotion, Serafina began to feel increasingly fragile under the weight of relentless scrutiny. Her phone buzzed daily with texts from unfamiliar numbers, reporters eager for juicy details, strangers offering both judgment and advice, and worst of all, anonymous threats suggesting she was unworthy of Lennox's love. Each message drained her emotionally, pushing her closer to the edge of exhaustion. Lennox tried to shield her from the world's cruelty, but even his power had limits. One evening, Lennox arranged a private dinner on the terrace, overlooking the glittering lights of Miami. Soft music drifted from hidden speakers, candles flickered gently, and roses filled the space with their sweet fragrance. It was the perfect setting, romantic, intimate, but Serafina found herself restless, her thoughts distracted by lingering fears. "What's troubling you, Sarah?" Lennox asked gently, noticing her distant gaze. His eyes searched hers anxiously, desperate to offer comfort. Serafina hesitated, her voice soft and uncertain. "I'm worried about us, Lennox. About the babies. About the future. How long can we live like this, hiding, trapped, always under a microscope?" Lennox reached across the table, grasping her hand gently, his thumb brushing tenderly over her knuckles. "We won't live like this forever. I promise. I'll fix this, I'll silence the media, deal with Easton and Callum, and give us back our freedom." "How?" she whispered, her eyes pleading desperately for reassurance. "How do you fight against lies, Lennox? How do you stop people determined to destroy us?" Lennox's expression hardened with quiet determination. "With the truth. With strength. With patience. And if necessary, with every last resource I possess." Nothing matters to me more than protecting you and our children. His sincerity filled her heart with warmth, yet she couldn't completely silence the voice of doubt whispering within her. After dinner, as they settled in the living room, Lennox pulled her close, holding her gently in his embrace. For a few precious moments, she allowed herself to forget the world outside, finding solace in the quiet rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. However, peace was short-lived. Just as the couple began to relax, Lennox's phone rang insistently. He frowned, glancing down at the unfamiliar number. Answering quickly, his face immediately darkened, his voice dropping low with tension. "What do you want, Easton?" Lennox demanded coldly, his free hand tightening protectively around Serafina's waist. "Meet me tomorrow, alone, or I'll leak even worse secrets to the press," Easton threatened sharply, his voice dripping with bitterness. Secrets that could permanently ruin Serafina's reputation. Lennox's jaw clenched tightly, anger flashing dangerously in his eyes. "I won't let you hurt her anymore. This ends now." "Then meet me," Easton insisted. "Let's settle this between us, face to face." After ending the call, Lennox turned toward Serafina, expression grave. "I have to deal with him. It's the only way to protect you." Serafina's stomach tightened painfully with fear. "Please be careful, Lennox. Easton is dangerous when he feels cornered." The following afternoon, Lennox arrived at an isolated location to confront Easton, anger and determination coursing through his veins. Easton stood arrogantly, his expression cold and calculating, backed by Callum Maddox, who appeared equally ruthless. Lennox squared his shoulders, refusing to show vulnerability. "Leave Serafina alone," Lennox demanded sharply, his voice firm, uncompromising. "Your fight is with me, not her." Easton sneered bitterly. "She's the one who trapped you. I'm trying to protect our family legacy from being tarnished by someone like her. I'm giving you one chance: leave her, publicly renounce her, or I'll destroy both of you." "Never," Lennox growled fiercely. "I love her. I'll never let anyone, especially you, harm her." His passionate declaration shocked Easton, whose expression twisted briefly into raw jealousy. Callum stepped forward, his eyes narrowed dangerously. "You'll regret your choice, Lennox. Love makes men weak." Lennox stood resolute, unshaken. "No, Callum. Love makes men stronger. You should try it sometime." With a furious glare, Easton and Callum left, leaving Lennox standing alone but determined. He knew this fight was far from over, but for now, he'd sent a clear message. Back at the penthouse, Serafina paced nervously, awaiting Lennox's return. When he arrived safely, she rushed into his arms, sobbing with relief. Holding her close, Lennox vowed fiercely, "They won't break us, Sarah. I won't allow it." Days turned to weeks, and Lennox worked tirelessly to dismantle Easton and Callum's leverage. He publicly released statements correcting false stories, carefully rebuilt trust among investors, and relentlessly exposed Callum's unethical tactics. Gradually, the media storm began to settle, replaced by admiration for Lennox's unwavering devotion to his pregnant partner. During that turbulent period, Serafina's due date approached rapidly. Lennox, vigilant and protective, stayed by her side, ensuring she received the best care. Their relationship deepened further, strengthened by their shared struggles. Each challenge had brought them closer, forging a bond far stronger than either had ever anticipated. Late one night, Serafina woke abruptly, intense pain gripping her body. Lennox reacted immediately, racing her to the hospital as labor began unexpectedly. Doctors swarmed, urgently preparing for the complicated delivery. Fear consumed Lennox as he waited outside the operating room, helplessly pacing, desperate for news. Hours later, a nurse emerged, smiling gently. "Congratulations, Mr. Caldwell. You have 4 healthy babies, 2 boys and 2 girls. Serafina is safe, though exhausted. You can see her now." Lennox entered quietly, eyes filling with tears of relief and joy at seeing Serafina cradling their newborn quadruplets, exhaustion mingling with radiant happiness on her face. Approaching softly, Lennox kissed her tenderly, whispering emotionally, "You've given me everything, Sarah. My life had no meaning until you came into it." Serafina gazed at him lovingly, tears filling her eyes. "And you've given me hope, Lennox. Hope for the future I never thought possible." As they gazed lovingly at their new family, they both knew their struggles were far from over. But together, they had built an unshakable foundation of trust and devotion that no scandal, rival, or threat could ever destroy again. After the birth of their quadruplets, Serafina and Lennox entered an entirely new chapter of their lives, one filled with exhausting yet beautiful chaos. The penthouse transformed rapidly from a luxurious sanctuary to a bustling family home, overflowing with the sounds of crying babies, laughter, and whispered late-night conversations as they navigated the uncharted territory of parenthood. The babies, 2 sons, named Callahan and Daylon, and 2 daughters, Arabelle and Viviana, quickly became the center of their universe. Despite having no experience as parents, Lennox and Serafina devoted themselves wholeheartedly to their new roles. Lennox, who was accustomed to leading board meetings and negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts, now found himself mastering diaper changes, bottle feedings, and midnight lullabies. He surprised himself with how deeply he loved fatherhood, feeling a protective instinct toward his children that far exceeded anything he'd experienced in his business career. Yet the demands of parenthood quickly tested their endurance. The quadruplets required constant care, leaving Serafina perpetually exhausted and overwhelmed. Though she had Lennox's unwavering support, she struggled emotionally, silently battling feelings of inadequacy and the lingering insecurities planted by the scandals they'd endured. Her once slender frame was now transformed by motherhood, and as she stood in front of the mirror late at night, tears occasionally filled her eyes, questioning whether she was truly the woman Lennox had fallen for. Lennox noticed the subtle changes in Serafina's mood and appearance. His heart ached every time he saw her quietly withdraw into herself. One evening, after putting the babies to sleep, he approached Serafina as she stood quietly gazing out the window at the glittering city below. Wrapping his arms tenderly around her waist from behind, he whispered gently, "Tell me what's bothering you, Sarah." She sighed softly, leaning back against him, feeling his comforting strength. "I feel like I'm not enough anymore, Lennox. Everything has changed so much. I'm afraid you'll wake up one day and realize you deserve better." Lennox gently turned her to face him, his expression fiercely protective. He cupped her face lovingly, eyes intense and sincere. "Listen to me clearly, Sarah. You are everything I've ever wanted. You're the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I've ever known. Becoming a mother only makes you more incredible in my eyes." Serafina looked up at him, eyes wide with vulnerability. "You mean it?" He nodded, tenderly brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Every word. I love you more now than I ever imagined possible." His words filled her heart with warmth and quiet confidence. With Lennox's unwavering reassurance, Serafina gradually embraced her new role fully, growing stronger each day, trusting in the love he so freely offered. But just as their happiness settled into a comfortable rhythm, another storm brewed silently behind the scenes. Lennox's business rival, Callum Maddox, was not yet done with his plans for revenge. Humiliated by Lennox's recent victories, he saw the birth of the quadruplets as an opportunity to strike where it hurt most. One afternoon, as Serafina prepared to take the babies to a doctor's appointment, she received an alarming phone call. An unfamiliar voice warned her coldly, "If you value your children's safety, you'll leave Lennox Caldwell immediately. Otherwise, next time it won't just be a call." Terrified, Serafina immediately informed Lennox, who reacted swiftly, his face pale with fear and anger. He enhanced security, placing guards both inside and outside the penthouse. Despite the precautions, anxiety and dread gripped them, robbing their lives of the peace they had finally found. Determined to confront Callum once and for all, Lennox arranged a meeting, vowing to end the threats. He entered Callum's office with fierce determination, eyes cold and hard. "Leave Serafina and our children out of this, Callum," Lennox demanded harshly. "This feud is between us. Targeting my family is beneath even you." Callum merely smiled coldly, unbothered by Lennox's anger. "You destroyed me, Lennox. Did you really think I'd forgive so easily? She's your weakness, and weaknesses must be eliminated." Lennox's fists clenched tightly, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Hurt her or my children, and I swear, I'll ruin you completely. There will be no mercy." Callum stared back defiantly, his eyes glinting with bitter resolve. "We'll see who wins in the end, Lennox. You can't protect them forever." Lennox stormed out, his heart pounding with rage and fear. He knew Callum was dangerous and would stop at nothing, but he vowed silently to protect his family at any cost. Back at the penthouse, Serafina anxiously awaited Lennox's return. When he arrived safely, she threw herself into his arms, trembling from anxiety. Lennox held her fiercely, his voice steady yet gentle. "He won't hurt us, Sarah. I promise you." But as days passed, tensions grew. Each day, Lennox feared Callum's next move, aware the threat still loomed. Determined to ensure absolute safety, Lennox surprised Serafina by secretly purchasing an elegant estate far outside the city, a secluded mansion surrounded by lush gardens and high walls, equipped with maximum security. "This is our new home," Lennox explained gently, standing with her in the spacious living room, sunlight streaming warmly through expansive windows. "It's safe here, far from the city and away from anyone who might want to hurt us." Tears filled Serafina's eyes as she looked around, moved by his tireless efforts to protect their family. She embraced him tightly, overwhelmed by his devotion. "Thank you, Lennox. I don't know how I ever deserved someone like you." He gently lifted her chin, gazing deeply into her eyes. "You deserve the world, Sarah, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." Together, they slowly adjusted to their secluded yet peaceful new home. Lennox worked remotely, determined to remain by Serafina's side, helping her care for their growing quadruplets. With each passing day, they regained confidence and peace, focusing solely on their family, free from the constant threat of danger. Yet despite their happiness, both knew Callum's silence could only mean he was preparing another move. Neither Lennox nor Serafina could fully relax, sensing the calm was merely temporary. They prepared themselves emotionally, silently strengthening their bond, knowing another battle was inevitable. But in the safety of their secluded sanctuary, Lennox and Serafina made a solemn vow: whatever storms lay ahead, they would face them together. Their love, born from one reckless night, had weathered scandal, betrayal, danger, and fear, and emerged stronger than ever. Neither knew exactly what lay ahead, yet they trusted their bond to withstand it all. Holding tightly onto each other, Lennox and Serafina realized that together, there was nothing in the world they couldn't overcome. As weeks slipped into months, Lennox and Serafina gradually found peace within the secure embrace of their new estate. Their secluded home, nestled in a lush, hidden corner of Florida, felt like a sanctuary, a place where the turmoil of their past could not reach them. Surrounded by vibrant gardens, tranquil ponds, and the soothing sounds of nature, they built a new life focused solely on raising their quadruplets and strengthening their unbreakable bond. For Serafina, the transition was bittersweet. She adored motherhood, cherishing every sleepless night, every laughter-filled afternoon spent playing with Callahan, Daylon, Arabelle, and Viviana. But beneath her happiness lingered an unsettling restlessness, an intuitive feeling that the past was not yet done with them. Lennox, too, sensed that their peace was fragile. Despite the enhanced security and careful isolation, he remained vigilant, secretly wary of Callum Maddox's lingering threat. One evening, as the Florida sun set gently, painting the sky in vibrant shades of lavender and gold, Serafina watched the babies sleeping peacefully in their nursery. Her heart swelled with pride and fierce protectiveness. She stepped quietly into the living room, finding Lennox sitting pensively near the window, lost in thought. He turned as she approached, offering a gentle smile. "Are they asleep?" Serafina nodded, curling into his side as he pulled her close, his arm wrapping protectively around her shoulders. For several minutes, they sat quietly, listening to the distant sounds of the night and the gentle rhythm of each other's breathing. "Lennox," Serafina finally whispered softly, breaking the silence, "do you think we'll ever truly be free from Callum? From the fear and the threats?" He sighed deeply, gently stroking her hair. "I wish I could promise that, Sarah. But until I can neutralize him completely, he'll always be a shadow hanging over us." She lifted her gaze, eyes filled with quiet determination. "Then face him, Lennox. End this. I can't bear living with constant anxiety, always wondering when he'll strike next. For our children, for our future, we must confront him head-on." Lennox nodded slowly, admiring her courage. "You're right. I can't let him control our lives. I'll finish this." The following morning, Lennox made arrangements to return to Miami, determined to confront Callum Maddox directly. He instructed his most trusted bodyguards to stay with Serafina, ensuring absolute safety. The goodbye was difficult, tension thick between them as Lennox kissed Serafina deeply, silently promising to return quickly. Back in Miami, Lennox arranged a high-stakes meeting with Callum at an exclusive hotel lounge. His rival arrived promptly, arrogance emanating from every step. Lennox's gaze hardened as he faced the man who'd relentlessly tried to destroy his happiness. "This ends now, Callum," Lennox said sharply. "Name your price, whatever it takes to leave Serafina and my children alone." Callum sneered coldly. "You think you can buy me off? It's not about money anymore, Lennox. It's about humiliation. You stole from me, so I'll take what matters most to you." Lennox's jaw tightened, fury simmering dangerously beneath his controlled exterior. "I've already beaten you once. Don't force me to destroy you completely. Walk away now, and I promise no further retaliation." Callum laughed bitterly. "Your threats are meaningless. You've grown weak, Lennox, softened by love and fatherhood. I see vulnerability in your eyes." Lennox stepped closer, his voice dangerously low. "Love hasn't made me weak, Callum. It's made me stronger than ever. Hurt my family, and you'll regret it." Without another word, Callum left abruptly, but Lennox knew their conflict was far from over. He immediately mobilized his security team, fully prepared for retaliation. Yet, even he underestimated Callum's ruthlessness. Hours later, at their Florida estate, Serafina received an urgent alert from security. Intruders had breached the perimeter. Her heart raced as she gathered the babies, sheltering them protectively in a locked panic room designed specifically by Lennox for emergencies. She heard distant shouting, muffled chaos erupting outside the room. Her heart pounded painfully, each passing second agony as she desperately prayed Lennox's security team could repel the attackers. Back in Miami, Lennox received the horrifying news of the attack. Terrified for Serafina and the children, he rushed back to Florida immediately, anguish consuming him. Arriving at the estate, he was met by his security chief, who assured him the attackers had been neutralized, and Serafina and the quadruplets were safe. Bursting into the safe room, Lennox fell to his knees, clutching Serafina tightly, breathing her scent deeply, overwhelmed by relief. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never imagined he'd be so desperate." She trembled in his embrace, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was so scared, Lennox. I thought I'd lose the babies, I thought I'd lose you." He held her fiercely, voice filled with emotion. "Never again. I swear, I'll end this permanently." The attack finally pushed Lennox to take decisive action. Using his vast resources, he launched a legal and media campaign against Callum, uncovering evidence of numerous illegal activities, including financial fraud and blackmail. The public scandal swiftly consumed Callum, leading to his arrest and swift downfall. Lennox's ruthless precision surprised even those closest to him, reminding everyone why he had once been known as one of the most formidable men in business. With Callum finally behind bars, Lennox returned home to Serafina, exhausted but victorious. As he entered the quiet nursery, seeing her gently rocking one of their daughters, he felt his heart swell with gratitude and love. Serafina looked up, eyes filled with relief. "Is it truly over?" He nodded solemnly, kneeling beside her. "It's over. Callum will never threaten us again. We're safe, Sarah, forever." She sighed deeply, finally allowing herself to believe in a future free from fear. Together, they embraced their newfound peace, determined never to take it for granted. Yet, even in their victory, the attack had profoundly changed them. Lennox realized he could no longer live a life defined solely by business ambitions. His family had become his true purpose. He stepped back from daily management, appointing trusted executives to oversee his company, dedicating himself fully to fatherhood and supporting Serafina's dreams. In the following months, Serafina found new confidence, inspired by Lennox's unwavering love and protection. She established a charitable foundation supporting young mothers facing hardships, using their story to empower others. Their bond grew deeper, strengthened by trials, yet healed by compassion and resilience. And as Lennox held Serafina close one peaceful evening beneath the stars, he whispered softly, "We faced everything meant to destroy us, and we survived. Our love was stronger than fear, stronger than hatred. Nothing will ever come between us again." Serafina smiled warmly, feeling absolute certainty in his words. Their journey had tested them repeatedly, yet they emerged together, scarred but stronger, wounded but wiser. For Lennox and Serafina, the past had finally lost its power, replaced entirely by a future filled with hope, family, and unbreakable love. The storm clouds that had once threatened Lennox and Serafina's happiness had finally parted, replaced by clear skies and a sense of hope neither had ever truly allowed themselves to feel before. Life slowly settled into a comforting rhythm at their secluded estate, the drama of the past fading gradually into distant memories. For the first time in months, Serafina felt genuinely safe, genuinely loved, and utterly secure in the knowledge that Lennox would move mountains to protect her and their children. The quadruplets flourished under the protective embrace of their parents, transforming their once quiet home into a lively hub filled with laughter, playful squeals, and the joyful chaos of family life. Lennox, once ruthless and distant, now eagerly embraced his role as father, taking pride in even the smallest milestones. He patiently soothed Daylon when he cried at midnight, lovingly rocked Azura and Eloin to sleep, and proudly cheered as Callahan took his first shaky steps. Despite the luxury that surrounded them, Serafina and Lennox remained firmly grounded in the simplicity of love. Their romance, born from a single reckless night, had blossomed into something far deeper and richer. Yet even in their peaceful sanctuary, they knew there remained one final step to solidify their union fully, something Lennox had been planning quietly, with meticulous care. On the anniversary of their unforgettable first meeting, Lennox asked Serafina to accompany him back to Miami, promising her a special evening out. Curious and slightly nervous, she agreed. They arrived at Luminescence, the very nightclub where they'd first met, now closed for a private event Lennox had personally arranged. As Serafina stepped inside, her breath caught sharply at the transformation. Soft candlelight glowed warmly throughout the club, white roses filled every available space, and a string quartet played softly in the background. "What is all this?" she asked softly, looking up at Lennox with surprise and anticipation shining in her eyes. He smiled gently, taking her hand firmly in his voice steady but thick with emotion. "This is where it all started, Serafina. It only seemed right to return here, to the place where you changed my life forever." Guiding her to the center of the room, Lennox took a deep, steadying breath before dropping slowly to one knee. Serafina's heart skipped wildly, her pulse racing as he gazed up at her with eyes so filled with love it stole her breath completely. "Serafina," he began, his voice steady yet deeply emotional, "from the moment you walked into my life, you changed everything. You showed me love when I thought I was incapable of feeling anything genuine. You made me a better man, someone I never dreamed I could become. I want nothing more than to spend every single day showing you how deeply and profoundly I adore you. Would you make me the luckiest man alive and marry me? Not because of our past, not because of our children, but simply because you love me as fiercely as I love you." Tears streamed freely down Serafina's cheeks as she reached out, trembling fingers softly caressing his cheek. "Yes," she whispered passionately, voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Lennox, 1,000 times yes. I love you so deeply, more than I ever imagined possible." He rose instantly, pulling her close, capturing her lips in a tender, heartfelt kiss that sealed their promise forever. The quartet's music swelled gently around them, a perfect accompaniment to their intimate embrace. As Lennox slipped the exquisite diamond ring onto her finger, applause broke the spellbound silence. Turning in surprise, Serafina saw their closest friends and family stepping forward from the shadows, clapping warmly, faces filled with joyous tears. Weeks later, Serafina stood at the edge of the sandy shore beneath a sunset sky streaked with shades of coral, gold, and violet. Dressed in a stunning, simple gown that flowed gently in the ocean breeze, she faced Lennox, who stood proudly, watching her with pure adoration. Their private ceremony, held at Lennox's exclusive private beach estate, was small, intimate, and perfect. Their quadruplets, adorably dressed in matching outfits, watched with wide-eyed wonder from their grandparents' arms. Their vows were simple but heartfelt. Lennox spoke openly, honestly, promising a lifetime of love, devotion, and unwavering loyalty. "You've taught me that the greatest strength lies not in power or wealth, but in vulnerability and love," Lennox vowed firmly, eyes locked unwaveringly onto Serafina's. "I promise to protect you, cherish you, and love you endlessly for as long as I live." Serafina, eyes glistening with tears, replied with quiet sincerity. "You showed me that true love isn't something we choose, it's something that chooses us. I promise always to trust you, always to stand by you, no matter what challenges we may face." Their kiss sealed the vows passionately, setting off joyful applause and cheering from those gathered around them. That night, as they celebrated under moonlight, Serafina knew with absolute certainty she'd found her forever, a love powerful enough to conquer every obstacle and heal every past wound. Months turned to years, and life settled beautifully into a fulfilling routine. Serafina and Lennox balanced parenthood with their careers, living a life filled with purpose. Serafina reopened a small cafe near their home, a modest place filled with warmth, laughter, and the comforting aroma of freshly baked pastries. Lennox, meanwhile, stepped back from day-to-day business, dedicating himself instead to philanthropy, particularly focusing on helping struggling single parents, inspired by Serafina's own story. They watched proudly as their children grew, thriving under their guidance. Callahan showed Lennox's determination, Dalon carried his mother's gentle spirit, Azra displayed her father's confident charisma, while Eloin embodied her mother's quiet resilience. Together, they formed an inseparable bond, a family forged from unexpected beginnings but solidified through unconditional love. Yet, even in their newfound happiness, Lennox and Serafina never forgot the painful journey they'd taken. Occasionally, shadows of their past resurfaced in dreams or quiet conversations, but instead of weakening them, those memories only deepened their appreciation for what they'd overcome. One evening, years later, as they sat quietly beneath the stars, Lennox wrapped his arms gently around Serafina, gazing lovingly into her eyes. "Did you ever imagine, when you met me, we'd end up here?" he asked softly. She smiled warmly, leaning into his embrace. "No, but maybe that's the magic of it all. Love found us when we least expected it, and I wouldn't trade any of the pain or struggles we endured, because it brought us here." Lennox kissed her softly, eyes reflecting endless adoration. Then here's to unexpected miracles, Serafina, and to a lifetime of love. Together, under a starlit sky, they knew their love story had been anything but conventional. Yet it had led them to a place of happiness, fulfillment, and trust neither had imagined possible. They'd faced betrayal, scandals, and danger, but in the end, love triumphed, proving stronger than any enemy, any doubt, any threat. And as they held each other, surrounded by the life they'd built, they understood clearly that their greatest strength had never been wealth or power. It had always been each other, and the extraordinary, undeniable love that had transformed their lives forever.